Great defeaters, new and old, welcome back to the Undefeated channel and welcome back to episode 3 of the breakdown with your peoples, Base the Kid, Tony, Pugilist Boy. We are the children of the game. What's good, Tony?
Hey, how you doing, babe? Great to see you again.
Always the same, man. Always love. How's everything been since the weekend, man? Are we ready to get into this? What are you saying?
Well, the weekend has kept me busy for these last few days because putting it together has meant having to trawl through a lot of footage, and it's been a good weekend of boxing. It's been an interesting one. It was kind of on the fence in terms of how it would be. A lot of matches didn't appear to be that competitive, but actually, it turned out to be not too bad. I was pleased. I was satisfied.
Okay, well, look, with that being said, as you said, we got a lot to get through. So say hello, say what's up to the chat so we can get into it.
So in the chat, welcome guys. Osborne, Mulla, North Bank Bren, Anjade Francis, Hot Pies, October Red, Uncle Jonah, MC Tasty and Chips, Mr. A, SWJ. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining. Phil Larkin, thank you very much for joining us once again.
Salute to the chat.
Absolute pleasure to be amongst you guys. So let's get it on.
All right. So what's the first topic, Tony? Let's go.
Okay. So we were headlining with 2 cards here in the UK on Saturday night. The first of which we will go into will be the Wembley card on Boxer, which was headlined by Richard Riakporhe versus the show-friendly Deon Jumah.
Okay.
As you know, there was a lot of heavy favoritism towards Deon Jumah from Monday Night Smoke the week previous because he's a friend of the guys. What was your take? In fact, before we go into that, let me pull up a little clip to remind the viewers then of how that went. Look carefully, guys, because this isn't a long clip.
Well, I mean, like a lot of other people, had to take a humble pie to take some crow on that one, because I did predict Deon. I thought it was gonna be a lot more tricky for him just due to the inactivity, but ultimately both him and Richard were out of the ring for near enough the same amount of time. So even though Richard managed to get in 2 proper, like, decent fights and Jumah only had like a 4-rounder, I thought, well, they're both in a similar space. Both coming off of a different, injuries and whatnot, and inactivity. So I thought the person with the superior boxing skills and the person that's the southpaw would have ultimately taken it. But hey, I was wrong, same as a lot of others.
Yeah, I'm gonna join you in that one because I also had Deon Jumah to win this one. I figured from my viewpoint of seeing Richard Riakporhe in his previous 2 fights that the work would be too much for him. I expected Jumah to apply a lot of pressure, which he did in a good manner, but I thought it would at some point just become too much, and the work would be in the advantage for Jumah at the end of the fight. I even thought there was a possibility that, later into the rounds, maybe Riakporhe might be running out of juice and there was a possibility of a stoppage. But give the credit to Richard Riakporhe. He stuck to his game plan. There wasn't really much that showed me anything over and above what I had seen previously, in all honesty. It was no improvement in his game that made me think, oh, he's brought something new in. For a guy with his attributes, I mean, let's be honest, he's a tall guy, he's a physical phenom, very athletic. He doesn't utilize what he has. I always say this, I always revert to type. Anytime I get a big, long heavyweight or a big, long heavy guy, I think go watch some Larry Holmes.
Mm.
Go and see how Larry Holmes can get on his toes and stretch a jab and just keep a guy on the end of that jab. Because if you can bring that into your game in any modicum, you're trouble. You know, I said this about Akoli. I've said this about Anthony Joshua. Bring that into your game, you will cause trouble. You know, and unfortunately, it just looks like Richard Riakporhe is doing the same things over and over. Gets away with it today. I see people calling out a unification or a local unification in terms of him fighting Akoli. For me, Akoli is levels above.
Yeah, I give you that. I mean, one thing I will say about Richard now, as opposed to when he just before the injury, like before, he was very much everything was all about just landing the big power, but it was like scared power a lot of the time. He didn't want to get hit. He didn't want to be in the trenches. It was all literally about, you know, it was almost get off me power, like move from me kind of thing, as opposed to setting stuff up. There's very little work rate there. And to be fair, I'll give him the first round. I actually gave him the first round just because both of them didn't really do much. He kind of stepped forward a bit more that, you know, sort of than Jumah, and was sort of, you know, he did throw out the jab a little bit more than Jumah did. But outside of that first round, and then obviously the fourth, there wasn't really much. And the seventh, I gave him the seventh as well. But I couldn't really give up. I couldn't really give him much else other than that. And then even in the fourth, when he knocked down Jumah, like he threw a shot without even looking where it was going. So it's not like anything was set up. It was literally a hit and hope. And it was just the fact it was the power that got Jumah out of there. Prior to that, Jumah was doing very well, sort of leaning back with his stance, like swaying backwards, trying to work his way in. But there was a couple times when he would get on the inside. And it was really weird how he would literally be on the inside of Riakporhe and then decide to back out and not throw it, not even throw a jab, not even throw a little hook. Like he's literally inside the guy's guard. The arms can't extend at this point. And then it's like he was stopping. So I don't know if he was just anticipating that something might come back. So he's like, no, let me get out of here. Or if he was just saying, okay, let me see how I can get into range and then see how easy it is. So then later on, when the gas starts to wear down, maybe that's going to be my option. It's a bit weird how he was doing that. But I mean, look, ultimately he got, he got stopped. The punch to put him down, it wasn't really a hard punch. He even said it himself. Like Riakporhe didn't even step into it with any vigor. It was just happened to be the perfect shot at the perfect time. And that obviously I can see that October's in the chat. She's not really happy with with the critiques of Richard. But you know, we gotta be honest. We gotta be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you look at the finishing shot, it goes through a cross-arm defense, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, really? Because he doesn't throw it with a natural swing of the shoulder like a backhand would be. So it's an arm shot, you know. Not something you'd expect to drop a man and leave him wounded the way Jumah was. And obviously the fact that he crawled halfway across one side of the ring, you kind of go, well, boy, that had an effect.
There was some power there. And I think the crawling, as funny as it looked, I think it was literally he was trying to stretch out where it had hit him to almost try to get his breath back that way. That's what it looked like, but it looked funny. You know, it just like stay down.
So we got to give October Red some response here, because she's saying that we said he would lose and he was the lesser of the two fighters, but we still discredit him even though he won. Well,
we haven't discredited him. We've literally said he didn't do much apart from the shots that he landed. And ultimately, are we lying? If we look at the rounds, he didn't win any real conclusive rounds apart from the ones that he hurt Jumah in. Everything else, it was nip and tuck, or Jumah clearly won the rounds. So he was still the better boxer. Riakporhe just won the fight, and we've given him the credit for that. I gave him the credit yesterday. I gave him the credit now. I eat humble pie. But, you know, we have to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, you know, look, he gets the W. Hats off to Richard Riakporhe. We just, you know, as you said, Base, we just want to see more. We want, you know, I think a few people in the chat have also said likewise. So, that being said, shall we move on?
Let's move on. We got to get through this.
Let's do that. Okay, so the next fight we're going to talk about is moving up the country to the Josh Warrington versus Kiko Martinez rematch for Kiko's world title. And here we go with the end of the So I don't know about you, but I saw at least 2 blatant headbutts in there. Even in that
there was about 5. The guy had 4 cuts on his face, and none of them came from punches. So, and the thing is, look, as I said yesterday, right, I want to give Warrington his credit for the fact that outside of obviously that and what that contributed, he found spite in punches that I haven't seen him find before. He moved correctly. He stayed busy. He kept on Kiko. Didn't give him a chance to reset. Didn't give him a chance to sort of work his way into the fight. Those old legs, you know, he didn't give him a chance to shake out the legs either. Like, there was no breaks. He was on him, and ultimately, like I said, the punches had more spite than I've ever seen for Warrington. So somewhere he's been training for power, because it looked like he didn't look like a guy that only had 7 KOs before that fight. So I want to give him his credit for that. But if we look at some people are trying to say they were accidental head clashes. Well, no, because if they were accidental, more than likely Warrington would have been the one on the worst end, because Kiko is a shorter fighter. So when you've got a shorter fighter trying to come onto your chest, more than likely he's going to have to be rising up. But how is it the case that the taller fighter is the one causing all of the damage on the top of the other guy's head? Like, it doesn't make any sense unless you are intentionally leading with your head to stay in a commanding position. And yeah, as far as I'm concerned, there's no way that any of them can be excused, especially if they caused the amount of damage they caused.
So what I'm going to say is, Warrington has this history. He has this in his history. Let's not forget the type of fighter that Warrington is. He's a pocket fighter. He wants to be on your chest. He doesn't have any business being on the outside, trying to jab, work angles. He wants to be in your chest, and he wants to outwork you because he has got that knockout. As you said, 7 knockouts in his entire resume shows you I'm not a big puncher. But what he did was, starting off that fight, he showed us the tenacity and the effort to come out and really take this fight to Kiko Martinez. He knew, look, I'm on my death knell, because if I lose this fight, I might as well retire. So he came out with bad intentions, and he put it on Kiko. Mm-hmm. He put the kitchen sink on Kiko, because in the first 2 rounds, I was very impressed. But I also was wary, is he going to have anything left in the tank in rounds 5, 6, 7, and 8? And lo and behold, he ran out of steam. But what he was able to do was continue to tangle and use the dark arts. Let's be honest. Josh Warrington is a master of the dark arts. We've seen the headbutts before in previous fights. We know he's going to throw an elbow or shoulder. I mean, he literally will hit you with the kitchen sink. So there was nothing off key here that we haven't seen before. So I'm going to answer Osborne's question. Out of 10, he gets a 10 because he's a master at it. He's a master of the dark arts. You know, look at the Lara fight. He butt that poor kid to death.
You know? It was, I mean, yeah. And the thing is obviously what makes it worse is that for the ref to not, the ref, like, literally, he warned him, I think, once for a shoulder. So you can see Kiko's face is sprayed up with blood, but you warn him for a shoulder that he put into the guy's chest. Like, on numerous occasions, but his face being like a bloody mess meant nothing to you, kind of thing. So, and some obviously they say sometimes when you get a fighter that's just their style, they get away with it because people say, oh well, they just fight like that. Well, no, because if that's the case, look at someone like Chocolatito. He's an inside fighter. He doesn't jab a move. He stays on a man's chest. He stays in the pocket, but he's not in there butting people. So clearly it's something that it's a skill or a tactic that you're using, because if you really wanted to not do it, it wouldn't happen. And the fact that it's only his opponent that's getting just getting injuries from it tells you that that's his tactic, because he's training himself and his skin to not bust in certain angles. He's putting it into a point where he's going to be okay, but he knows it does maximum damage on the other side.
Yeah.
But if it was a head clash, both of them would have bust.
Yeah. And as a trainer myself, look, I've got a kid working out in the gym. He's doing sparring with a head guard on. I'm shouting at that kid anytime his head touches the other guy's head. Because what you have to remember is, you've got to realize, as good a chance as you've got of hitting a guy in the head with your head and him and busting his eye, there's as equal a chance of you busting your own eye. So any decent trainer, unless you're that well versed in the dark arts, Mr. Matt Tasty and Chips, if you're not versed in it, you stand to lose just as much as the other guy if you don't do it right. So it kind of tells you, look at this guy's history. He knows how to do it and make sure he don't get the cuts all over his face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, look, as I said, and I said this yesterday, it won't sort of labor the point, but he's gonna have to do his mandatory next, because that IBF mandatory has been around the wings for a little while. Wood's not gonna get upgraded quick enough to be able to have a unification with his regular belt, unfortunately, because they're still playing with Santa Cruz. So I think, in my opinion, if Lara can't get the fight next with Warrington, I've said that I think Warrington should fight his mandatory next around sort of June, July time. Lee Wood should fight Lara, and then the winner of those two fights come together towards the end of the year, October, November time, and yeah, you sort of settle it that way. So that way, if Lara actually beats Wood, then he's got a legit claim to be able to, to be in the ring again with Warrington and not be avoided. And I do agree with McTasty and Chips. Chocolatito is 10 levels above, but it just shows you that you can fight in the pocket and not, be butting someone left, right, and center. Because even Holyfield, he used to put his head in, but he wasn't like cutting people left, right, and center for the majority of the time. Like, you know what I mean? So there's still a way to do it and not cause injuries like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he got the victory. Well done, Josh Warrington. We are going to criticize when we see headbutting at the level that we saw on Saturday night, but he gets the win. He's now again a world champion. The finish was, decent, but I think it was more. He missed more shots than he hit.
Of course, yeah.
The honest truth in that final flurry, and as I said, you add the headbutts in there that took place as well, and I think the referee was just going, well, it's only going to get worse for the face of Kiko Martinez.
Yeah.
I saw a comment a bit earlier about, did Kiko Martinez overnight become
sure
an old man? I wouldn't go against that comment. I do think Kiko Martinez right now is probably at the end of his road. Look, this he's been to Britain and fought every super featherweight that we've ever had.
Yeah.
I think he's fought people in black and white. He's that old.
I mean, he's had over 60 fights, so yeah, it makes sense. I feel like he achieved his dream of wanting to be a champion again. He didn't get to hold on to it for long enough, but I don't think he's gonna stick around, nor should he. He's done everything he wanted, and I think he'll probably go down as the greatest Spanish fighter of all time thus far.
Wow.
thus far. Yeah.
I might have to do my research on that one.
Yeah, do the Googles on that
I've
one.
got to be sure there's got to be a better Spanish fighter. But look, it is what it is.
All right, let's move on.
Let's move on, indeed.
Awkward.
So on the same card that night was another world title, which was Ebanie. So that was a good performance by Ebanie Bridges. I'm taking my hat off and say, well done. She, to me, has matured as a fighter since the day she stepped over into the UK. So, if you look at her first fights here in the UK, she has improved so much. I got to take my hat off and say, well done, Ebanie Bridges. Dominated what was a good fighter, but you know more about those female fighters. What's your take?
So first of all, I agree that she did a lot better in that fight than number one I expected her to do. She's developed a very good jab overnight under the tutelage of Mark Tibbs. I guess the fact that obviously she was a teacher sort of made so she will be someone that she'll do her homework, so she'll go training, she'll learn, then she'll study tapes. One thing I've heard and I've sort of witnessed from her is she is very much a student of boxing. Like, she's one of those people that literally can talk boxing all day long, will watch fights from the 30s, 40s, like she literally does all of that. So I give her props on that. However, when I watched the fight, I was looking at the performance. I said, okay, I want to see, because I predicted the first 4 rounds is pretty much going to be fairly dominant Ebanie, but like Cecilia might nick around somewhere, and then she'll take over the second half because Ebanie doesn't have a gas tank. Now, ironically, Shannon Courtney said she's got a good engine on there, but that's a lie, because from round 4 onwards, Ebanie was blowing heavy throughout the rest of the fight. She did well to keep up a punch rate, but you could tell when she was going back to the corner, like if Cecilia Roman had any more pop, I think Ebanie could have ended up on the floor at least once in that fight. Now, me personally, it was one of those fights where I scored it a certain way, which I'll tell you in a second, but whoever won the fight, I wouldn't have had any complaints. It was one of those ones, because I definitely think Maria Cecilia Roman took over on the second half of the fight with a lot more cleaner work, but Ebanie was still managing to keep up a decent pace and look busy, even though a lot of her punches weren't getting through in the second half, and a lot of Roman's was. But it was a case of, do you like the work rate, or do you like sort of the cleaner, more impactful stuff that you saw? Me, I went for the cleaner, more impactful stuff, and I actually had it Roman like 6-4, but ultimately I said, you know what, Ebanie did enough, and I can see why you give her certain rounds as well. So a 7-3 to Ebanie, like a 6-4 to Ebanie, I had no issues with. One of the cards that was 100-91, like shambolic, shambolic card. I mean, I will say, Roman, in hindsight, it was probably the wrong tactic, because maybe she thought Ebanie would gas out even worse than she did. So she literally topped up and stood in front of her and said, all right, let's see what you've got. And she allowed Ebanie to unload, which obviously Ebanie wouldn't have done as much if Roman was moving about as she normally can. So she started to move a bit later on, but she topped up and just took the shots and said, okay, I'm gonna let you drain your tank and I'm gonna take over. But I think that she implemented the style a bit too late, forgetting that women only get 2 minutes and they only get 10 rounds. It's not 12. If it was over 12, I think she probably would have got that decision, because she just had more in the tank. But yeah, ultimately, like, Ebanie gets the credit. She was a deserved winner, regardless of how I scored it. She definitely did. It wasn't a robbery or any way. She deserved the win. And moving on, I've got a video that I will be doing, hopefully dropping tomorrow. I'll actually be talking about some of her potential opponents moving up. And put it this way, out of the people that are going to be on that video, she won't keep that belt for long if she has to face any of them. That's all I'm going to say.
Excellent. So for guys, those of you who haven't joined on to Base the Kids YouTube channel, I highly recommend you go across there. He does some great dissection of the women's boxing game. done some special only women shows. Definitely go over there and check it out. Fantastic. There's a couple of comments here about Shannon Courtney. I give that as much airtime as I would give an FART, because in my eyes, if you think Shannon Courtney beats this version of Ebanie Bridges, you're smoking something.
I don't even think she can get back down to the weight to fight her again, if I'm being honest. But you know what? Again, this isn't that type of show. So if we got other comments, let's do that. Otherwise, let's move on to the next one.
Let's move it on. Let's move it on. Right. The next fight we have is back down to the Wembley. Okay, so first things first, I gotta give props to Reece Cartwright, because he gave everything. You know, he left everything in the ring. This was no walkover for Dan Azeez. This was good work. This was the kind of work that you go, well, if I can't get the big boys, give me something that makes me learn, because I do believe Dan will have learned a hell of a lot from that fight. He was never at any given time just given an easy ride, but he took his time. He worked on his approach. He used his jab appropriately, and he had to work to get his the shots that he needed to finish Cartwright out against a foe who was throwing a lot of punches back in return. So well done, Reece Cartwright. I applaud you. Well done. But in terms of the overall finish, you know, look, Dan did what he had to do. It makes you think now, where does Dan stand in the pecking order of the light heavyweights? Because obviously we've got Buatsi facing Richards. Anti-Yard seems to have put himself on an island somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. You know, there are other fighters out there. Callum Smith.
Lyndon Arthur, Callum Johnson.
Arthur, yeah, lovely. Lyndon Arthur would be a good fight. I know that what's his name? Who fought Craig Richards?
Oh, Shakan Pitters.
Shakan Pitters is also back on the comeback trail, has been looking decent recently. So there's lots of good fights out there for Dan. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that next stage of his career looks. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, in the fight, it's weird because he looked a bit rusty. Like he fought recently, like it was the back end of last year, but he almost looked a bit labored at the start. And I think part of that just might have been change of opponent. It wasn't what he was expecting. And Reece was obviously, he moved well. Reece was probably what Hosea Burton should have been in the previous fight that Dan had, where Dan just literally controlled and stepped on him. Like, that's what Reece Cartwright was doing. He was sticking and moving. He wasn't being a stationary target. His only issue was the fact that none of his shots had any real power on them. Like, because Dan obviously he's not like he was just standing there saying, okay, hit me. But he was quite happy to take them to kind of get his work off. Whereas sometimes he's a bit more bob and weave in to try and sort of avoid a shot so that he can land his own. Again, like I said, it's a bit labored. And even his punches, as much as he was landing them, apart from when he was landing them corkscrew jabs that he likes to throw, he didn't look like any of them had any raw power on them. Even the uppercuts, they all looked a bit just sort of almost like arm punches, but it was just more accumulation. And I think that's one of the reasons why the towel never ended up coming in, because even though, yeah, Reece's head might be getting rocked here and there, it didn't look like those punches were super heavy. They just literally looked like arm punches just to score the points almost. So I definitely feel like he would have learned good about sort of obviously having to adjust and get his way in. And he's always going to be one of the shorter guys that he fights. So realistically, that's always going to be something he has to work on, is how to get himself in safely without taking some of those shots, because a bigger puncher than Reece Cartwright will put him in trouble if he's not always switched on and sharp. But yeah, I definitely think he'll learn from it, but he needs to make sure that he can't afford to have those lapses or those lackluster fights if he's really, if he really wants to progress up the ladder. Having said that, though, the fact that he looked a bit vulnerable in spots in that fight might make some of the other guys who are technically ahead of him in the pecking order say, all right, it's a big domestic one and it's definitely a lot more winnable for me than it is for him, so let's take it. So I do hope that he gets like a Yard or a Arthur or a Pitters next, and mix it up. He's got the British, like, just keep defending that British if he can, win it outright so no one can't say anything. He says he wants the unification with the Commonwealth title. I don't think Anthony Yard will take that fight, but if he does, again, that's another good one after we had Barazzi and Richards pairing off together. Shakan and Lyndon can pair off. Everyone just fight each other. That's what everyone wants. Johnson and Smith or however else you wanna play it. I definitely don't mind any of that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, as we've mentioned previously, the light heavyweight division is a very good division within the UK. There are lots of good contenders, and it's deep because we haven't even gone further down the list of light heavyweights who we could mention. But yeah, let's move on, shall we?
Okay.
Good stuff. We're going nice. So I'm going to move across to a card that took place in... Where did this take place? This was in the US somewhere. Tszyu.
I think it was on the East Coast.
East Coast. Okay. So this was Tszyu
against Terrell Gausha.
Gausha, yeah. Here's some action, guys.
Awkward right now. Kicked it right now. Oh, and the net drops Tszyu. Just like last time. Yeah, I want to see Tszyu let go of some body shots also. He's a good body puncher. There it is. There's that uppercut on cue. That Tszyu's applying right now. And down goes Gausha, and that is a knockdown, but no. Mark Nelson saying no knockdown. Yeah, another one. Those hurt. Oh, and there's a chopping right hand, and that hurt Gausha. Gausha almost went down, not quite. He said it's trying. He's still landing. Oh, my. Uppercut, and another uppercut. What a fun round. Yeah, this is the type of fighter he's got in front of him. There's a nice combination from Tszyu, and again, it forces Gausha.
But as Abner pointed out, the Lara and Lubin fights weren't like this. They were more tactical, other than the last part of the loop.
So that was Terrell Gausha against Tszyu, the son of famed Australian fighter. Yeah. That was a close fight. It was in. I don't think you got to watch that one, did you?
No, I saw that fight.
Oh, you saw that one? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Gausha had his moments. He kept that fight. A close fight. He never. He obviously the first round knocked down. But other than that, he didn't look in any great trouble. Tszyu has a very upright stance. He fights very straight, especially when you compare it with the way his dad used to fight. But he throws a lot of combinations, just like his dad. He won the fight, but I would say in terms of where his place sits in the super welterweight division, I think he's, knocking on a door for a world title shot. But, how do you see it?
Well, look, this is the first time I'm actually going to disagree with you. It wasn't a close fight for me. It was a competitive fight, but it wasn't close. And I feel like sometimes a lot of people get the two mixed up. Like, you can be competitive and still not win and not be like in control or not sort of be and you can be like a clear loser even in a competitive fight. Now, arguably to me, that's the best one-sided fight I've ever seen. Because it's, to me, like, apart from the first round and, you know, parts of the second, and obviously, yes, Terrell Gausha had some rounds where he did exchange back. Like, that was pretty much all Tszyu. Like, he was, you know, landing good jabs through the middle. He was going to the body. He was basically, it was almost like he was practicing his routine on Terrell Gausha at war, because Gausha would literally just get backed up to the ropes, can't move, can't get off the ropes, just stay there, take shots to the body, to the ribs, to the kidneys, like take a couple hooks, you know, take a couple double jabs, couple straight rights. Like, he was just teeing off on him. So, but give Terrell Gausha a lot of credit, because ultimately he's very tough. He didn't go down to anything like that was ruled a knockdown or anything like that. He took a lot of licks. His guard was very, very good all night. And yeah, there were rounds where he gave it back to Tszyu. Now, in terms of Tszyu, like, he literally came forward, as you said, very sort of plodding throughout a lot of the rounds. I think part of that was because I don't think after that first knockdown in the first, I don't actually think he respected Gausha's power, or he thought, if I come in my high guard, he's not gonna throw, and I can just keep walking him down. So rather than me having to try and find my way in, all I've got to do is just get him towards the ropes where he can't go nowhere, and just work on him. And I think that's literally what he done throughout the fight. So yeah, like I said, a very competitive fight. It was a very entertaining fight, but I definitely don't think it was close.
Yeah. We agree to differ on that one. There's a couple of good names being thrown out in the group. Obviously, one of the champs in Jamal Charlo. Jared Hurd would be a good fight for him, I think, at this stage. What's your thoughts on that?
Hurd can't get down to 154 again. I think he was fighting at 164 the other day. Like, I don't see him being able to get back down there. He's had too much time out the ring. J-Rock might be a decent shout. Tony Harrison, I think, would be a good shout, because if Tszyu, the one good thing about Tszyu is we're in March now. He'll be fighting again by June. The end of June, he'll be in the ring again. Like, he fights every 3 to 4 months. Yeah. And the best thing for him, who's a guy who wasn't really a big amateur like that, the activity is always going to keep him sharp. It's going to keep him sort of better than the others. And I don't think at the minute he's had enough fights where it's necessarily going to be a case of wear and tear. So he'll be able to beat a lot of these guys just on the fact that his work rate, and I don't even mean his work rate in the ring, I just mean his work rate in general, whereas half of them are always out of the ring 9, 10, 11 months. He's in the ring every 4 months. He'll be sharper. He'll be more active, which means that he'll just beat them on attrition alone, because he's got the engine to do it. His body's conditioned to go those hard yards where their bodies might not be the same anymore. So I feel until he gets to that proper, like, top echelon, he'll beat a lot of the also-ran or the fringe contenders just based off activity. But when he gets up to sort of like the Castanos and the Charlos, and even potentially someone like a Liam Smith.
How about Erickson Rubin? We haven't seen him since June last year, but he's his last win was against Jason Rosario.
But Lubin's not that. Lubin's levels above those fringe guys. He's still a world level guy, possible elite guy, like even at his advanced age.
I mean, they actually have a Gausha as a common opponent. Lubin beat Gausha in a 12-round unanimous decision. Tszyu has done the same.
Yeah. All of his fights he's lost, he's all been by decision. Like, he hasn't lost, he hasn't been knocked out or anything. So like I said, he's got a good guard. But as I said, I feel like he'll beat all the guys up toward until you get to the world level. That's when he'll start to struggle. Like a Liam Smith, I think will probably manage to might be able to get him out of there just due to experience, and he's a bit more frequent in his fights than they are. Obviously, a Lubin's another guy. Like I said, Charlo, Castano, and there's a couple others that probably will give him a lot of trouble with movement, especially. But it was a good performance.
Yeah, good. So moving on. the next fight that we have returning back was this Troy Williamson fight.
The champion that's coming off the better now, and these exchanges are close. And he's landing. The head movement is there, but he's not there like he was in those early rounds. Troy Williamson being roared on.
So that's as much action as I got, but it was an interesting fight. This is one that you didn't see, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't get to see that one. I'll try to, but yeah.
So Troy gets dropped in the first round, I think it was.
Okay.
By, oh my gosh, what's the guy's name? It will come to me.
Okay.
Help me out in the comments.
Someone in the
guys.
chat will probably tell you.
Someone in the chat's bound to tell me. But he comes back strong, and it's a good, sort of 12-round fight for Troy Williamson, and he sees it through in the end. But it was a good two-way battle. Both guys, gave each other, good levels of output. Close, in battles. I like Troy Williamson. He has something about him because he's able to box. He's able to punch with bad intentions. Obviously, we saw the way he dealt with Ted Cheeseman. But he's got everything in his game. To me, I think, he can switch hit. He looks like a guy who will give a lot of fighters trouble. Obviously, there's a big gap between him and the top of the elite in his division, but certainly at domestic level, he's one to look out for. I think he could give those guys at the top a real run for their money.
What was his gas tank saying? Because he has issues. Sometimes he has to take off quite a few middle rounds when he fights.
He knows when to take his breaks. Let's put it that way. Yes, He does take breaks, but I think there's guys that know how to take a break, and there's guys who have to take a break. If you see what I mean, yeah. There's those guys, and I think with Troy Williamson, he manages that very well, so that he knows, look, I could take a break, but I can still keep away out of damage, make sure I don't get hit. And use my jab effectively to make a round close or even nick it on a round where I haven't punched that much output. So, yeah, I like the kid. I think he's one to watch. Anyone else got any points about Troy Williamson?
It's the chat,
not a lot of people coming in. You got a request there from Stay Blessed.
Right, so stay blessed. The name is Base the Kid, the Hardcore Casual, but it's BASEDAKID, not spelt the way it's spelled on the show. And then just the Hardcore Casual. Like, yeah. You should find it. Just type in Base the Kid, you'll find it. Appreciate that.
So moving on, we go back to the States, and we saw a fight with former world champion Miguel Berchelt, and I can't remember how you say the other guy's name.
Nakathila,
that's it. Let's have a quick watch at some of the action. So, quick bit of action there, but this was again a very interesting fight. It was a pleasure to watch it. Berchelt came out, house on fire, looking like, look, I want to take this guy's head off. But Nakathila just, stayed with him, and then slowly, as Berchelt's engine seemed to fade, my guy just came on and slowly ground him out. What's your take?
Look, maybe I didn't watch it properly, but from what I saw, like Berchelt was getting battered from round 1 all the way to when it got stopped. Like I feel like he expected that him going up to lightweight would be the big benefit, because obviously he'd been killing himself to kind of make the sort of the super featherweight limit. But like Nakathila also came from super feather, but he's just like a naturally bigger guy. Now he's still good enough to make both, because I think he stays a bit more disciplined, or he makes the weight better. But you can tell that he was just a naturally bigger guy. He was like a lot thicker set. His back muscles were more defined. His reach was just longer. He was taller. So you could tell him keeping those extra pounds that he would have normally had to shed, like, really helped him. His punch power was devastating, and he wasn't even the shots, as hard as his shots were, you could tell he wasn't actually loading up with the shots. He was just like, he was throwing them fast and throwing them hard, but they weren't, like, you didn't see it in his face, like, I'm literally pulling this thing from the back of the room to come through your face. They was all just coming from the chest. But the power that each shot was generating was, it was to a level where, like, Berchelt was literally having to duck under. He was having to cover up. He's never had to do that. Even in the Oscar Valdez fight, he wasn't doing that. Like, so, and from like the first 2 rounds, those shots was bothering him. Like, his legs were stiffening from the first round. Like, the fact that he made it, I think it was 8 rounds, and he got stopped in just before the 9th, I think, on the stool, something like that. The fact he got that far tells you that that guy's still tough. He's still a warrior, but like his punch like his punch resistance is pretty much gone, because every punch was stiffening him up, and yeah, he's just not big enough to be at lightweight. So he'll be food for any decent level lightweight now, and he can't make super feather anymore. So unless he wants to be a gatekeeper for the prospects, it's not looking great for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, he's now 38-3, and all 3 defeats have come via stoppage. He's 30 years old. You could see an old man fighting on Saturday. He just looked like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. At the end of the fight, his face, it was like I don't know how much more I can take of this. He looked totally dejected with that. Was it 8th round, 6th round stoppage?
Was it the 6th? Okay.
Yeah, 6th round stoppage.
Oh, so it was at the end of the 6th, innit, going into the 7th.
Yeah, that's okay. Right. Yeah. So that was that one. The next fight, shall we?
Okay.
So that really was most of the big fights over the weekend. We then got some undercard fights, which we saw some kind of spectacular stuff. So we're going to start our look at the undercard beatdowns, the breakdowns of the beatdowns, starting with Caroline Dubois.
Backhand hook. Loop the backhand, loop the backhand. Now round Caroline.
It's disgusting how much better than her brother she is already. Like, it's mad.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say? She was vastly overmatched there. She just that opponent she wasn't ready. In the words of Kevin Hart, she wasn't ready. But yeah, great body shots. I did listen to Caroline's interview after, and she said that her first fight was a disaster for her. She actually said she was just throwing punches, but she didn't know what she was hitting. She didn't know what she was doing. In this fight, she was concentrating more on, taking her time and selecting her shots. And you could see she just looked so phenomenal. Her body shots were absolutely terrific.
I mean, yeah, you can tell that with the first fight, it was like, oh, this is my debut. Like, I need to impress. So she was just being a bit out of character. This one, she was looking, and like, even when she was having success to the head, she's like, no. There's no reason for me to target that such a small target up there when I've got all of this. Like, you're leaving all of this exposed. Like, this is easier for me to hit, and the fact I don't have to go up here means I actually get to save energy. Like, she's very smart in the way that she was thinking in that ring. And yeah, those shots, like, she was digging in those shots hard. And then she specifically she feinted just before that last shot went in. She actually feinted up towards the head with her backhand to make the girl raise her hands up, so that she was okay, I'm gonna try and get a punch off then. And that's when she dipped back underneath with the rib shot, which I guess took the girl in the solar plexus and just like stopped her like dead in her tracks. And yeah, the ref, I mean, not he did good to wave it off, but to be fair, I think that the way that the girl reacted is one of two things. I feel like the ref either should have allowed Caroline to carry on or wave it then and there, because that's not. Remember, if she hasn't gone down, I don't know where we got the whole standing 8 count thing, because more time than not, if the ref jumps in while you're still on your feet, he stops the fight, right? So that definitely should have been either, okay, you carry on till the girl either takes a knee, or you stop it because now she can't defend herself, because she was literally turning with her arms down, like there's no defense there. So that should have been a straight stoppage. There's no reason to carry on unless it was to say, okay, well, she hasn't been much in the ring. Let's like give Caroline a bit more, some rounds. But yeah, ultimately, look, it was a great second performance from her. Her competition has to get tougher, like, because I feel like she's better than who they've got in her in with it. Although her first opponent was actually a much better opponent than this one. So yeah, the next one needs to be a better opponent. Step her up gradually, not no massive steps. Like, she's young. You build her up nice and slow, but test on test on test. Give her someone that actually wants to fight back, and then let's see let's see the rest of the skills, because I definitely think they're there.
Right. So the next 3 fights, I'm just going to run them one after the other, because they are just some really nice first round KOs. The first one is Joe Pigford, which was on the undercard at Wembley. Then Adam Azim. And the third one is his brother, Hassan Azim. And here you go.
Shot! What a shot! Yes! Yes!
Look at that one again, because you might have blinked and missed it.
Shot! What a shot!
Okay.
So yeah, I particularly like the Joe Pigford shot. The overhand right is, a classic finisher punch.
Oh yeah, that was nice.
Brilliant white. It was nice. It was nice. Right on the point of the chin. That guy was out when he just crumpled into the corner. Adam and Hassan Azim, interesting fighters. I mean, I know they're only 2 and 3 fights into their career so far, but interesting to see 2 brothers entering the square circle at similar points in their lives, and see who's going to go the furthest out of those 2, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's really all of last week's action dealt with.
And we're going to talk about
King Yaya really enjoyed that Joe Pigford shot.
Yeah.
That was rude indeed.
So we're going to talk about this week's cards real quick. I mean, there's not much to do there.
Let's do that. So this weekend, guys, we'll be watching. There's not a great deal of boxing that I know of scheduled this weekend. The weekend following has a quite full calendar. But this weekend, the big card will be in the UK, up in Newcastle on Boxer. So that's on Sky. It's a Wasserman card, headlined by Savannah Marshall. What do you know about this one, Base?
Well, actually, I think the headline fight is technically going to be Marku and Jenkins because Marku sells the tickets, so they're going to put him on after this fight. From what I believe. Now, Femke Hermans is a fighter that doesn't like. She's a very stationary target, basically. So, Clarissa Shields wasn't able to get her out of there, but like she's quite tough, but she's very stationary. She's very hittable. So, if this fight goes more than 4 rounds, then Marshall is lacking in something because she will be there to be hit, like for those first 4 rounds. And with Marshall's power, I don't think Herman will stand up to it. If I'm gonna be totally honest, like I said, if she had a bit more elusiveness about her, or even a bit more sort of movement, fair enough. But she's very stationary. She's very upright, and there's not a lot of sort of substance or like in her work. It's very one-dimensional. It's very like workman-like. So yeah, Shields shouldn't have any problems with this one. I'm probably a bit more interested in the April Hunter and Georgia O'Connor fights, but if I'm totally honest, I will be dipping in and out of this card. Like I said, it's not a very big week for boxing overall, and there's something else coming on this week which I won't mention on the show, but that will be taking my focus for this weekend more so than that card. I'm trying to think, is the Fondora, is that card this week or next week? I think Fondora might be this week as well. On Showtime.
Can't say.
Because it's
if it's on, we'll catch it and we'll review it next week.
Yeah, because I think it's basically you had Gausha and Tszyu, and this one's like it's Fondora against someone. I can't remember who it was, but yeah, I think it might be this week. If it is, I'll watch that as well. But again, that has to come second after the other thing that I'm going to be partaking in this weekend.
It's not WrestleMania, is it?
Oh, it's WrestleMania weekend. Of all things that come on, WrestleMania is the one thing you have to watch. It's like the NFL. It's like the NFL. You got to.
It's out. The secret is out.
There's no secret to it. I'm openly a WWE WrestleMania fan. No shame at all.
Oh, bless. Anyway, guys, fantastic. We've done our hour. I'm just going to use this last couple of minutes to shout a few things that are happening for the people on the Undefeated channel. I want to tell you guys, if you haven't already watched it, catch up with the Undefeated Red News with our own October Red. They happen any given time at any given day. And believe me, anything that happens in boxing, we're going to be covering it with October Red. The other thing, of course, if you haven't, you may be new to our channel, but every Monday night, we have Monday Night Smoke featuring KG and Travis. That's every Monday at 8 o'clock. So we are running regular shows Monday Night Smoke, Tuesday, The Breakdown. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, don't forget to catch Base the Kid, the Hardcore Casual, his own show, any given day on his own platform on YouTube. Big shout out to the guys who started the platform, Travis and KG. Want to shout out Travis because if you like a bit of comedy, Travis is appearing at the Soho Theatre. I will be there on the 21st of June. Come join us because he's fantastic and it will be great to see many of you undefeateds in that venue.
Yo, Tony, you can't be there the 21st. That's the show day, man. That's the Tuesday. I'm going to be there on the 24th. I'm going to be there on the Friday.
Oh.
Yeah, you might have to change that one.
I can't. I can't. I'm going to see my boy. You're going to
I
have to
will
run
try.
the show.
Okay, Travis, you might have to get me. You might have to get me a co-host on that night. Still, we'll talk about that. But no, I'm gonna be there Friday 24th, most definitely. Actually, you know, I might be there more than one day. Who knows? Like I enjoy Travis's comedy immensely. I won't get into the story of how me and Travis first met, but it was not through boxing talk. Put it that way. But yeah, no, everyone look, large up. And also you forgot to mention, don't forget the pod. The pod is every Thursday. It normally drops between sort of 3 and 6 p.m. So like look out for that if you don't watch that as well. But yeah, the live shows is Mondays at 8, Tuesdays at 8, and then Undefeated Red News happens when it happens, whenever there's something to talk about. Like Red is on point. She's a beautiful person inside and out, and she delivers the news in the right way with the right kind of feeling behind it. So yeah, large up to Red, large up to Jules, large up to Wale, large up to Travis J, and large up to KG the comedian. But most of all, because this is our time, large up to Pugilist Boy and Base the Kid, the children of the game. Show's done. We are out. Thank you very much for watching, guys.
Have a great weekend, everybody.